Thank you for joining us on the Photo Flunky Show, episode 145. We've got a really simple question this week. Is gear more fun than creativity? Hey, thank you for joining us. And I'm really happy that I actually remembered which episode it was this week. My name is William Beem.
My name's Lee Beem.
And before we get started, we just want to let you know the show notes are going to be available at williambeem.com/episode 145. Hi, we help you improve your photography with visual storytelling. And we've really got three things that we hope that you'll be able to take away from this episode. One is really to decide if you like photography for the creativity or for using the gear. I don't really think there's a wrong answer. If it's a hobby and it's something you enjoy, who's to say what's the right way to enjoy it? Also, are you drawn to one side or the other because of your budget? And I think this is something that I found in the past, and it really does kind of make a difference to me. And I'm curious if this is something that makes a difference to other people. And finally, what really drives your satisfaction in photography? There are many aspects of it, from planning and preparing, who you're working with or where you're going, the photography itself, the post-processing, or perhaps the printing. And those are all things that we enjoy, but I think there's some aspects of it that probably we enjoy more than the others. So that's kind of where our topic is today. And let me start off with the idea of, do you like your gear more than your creativity? I would say when I started off photography, it was definitely drawn by the gear. I wanted to play with things.
Yeah, actually, so did I. And I don't know if that was an inherent desire that I had. I think I just merged into the world of photography. My introduction and the people I spoke to with the forums I visited for questions and answers, that was kind of the standard that seemed to be set, that, you know, to do this, you will solve a problem with gear. You know, I'm having a problem with this. And they say, the first thing I want to know, what camera are you using? What lens are you using? Oh, you should take a look at, and there was always something that you had to buy. And when you bought it, it never quite did everything, or there was another problem that would come up from that. And then there was something else you had to buy. So I think that it was without realizing, my mindset started to see that I needed stuff to take good photos. And when I'm talking about how I understood it at the time, that has changed.
And it's changed for me as well. But I remember this is kind of before Facebook and social media really took off. We were on sites like Flickr or other photography forums. And I don't know if they really get the same kind of attention that they used to, but some would always say, oh, you want to take a portrait, you need an 85 millimeter f1.4 lens.
Yeah.
If you don't have that, well, your photos are just going to suck.
Exactly.
And that was kind of the way that we interacted with each other. That's, as I was coming up and learning things. I mean, this was my second time through photography. I started off back when I was in high school with film, and I shot that way for a few years. And my idea of getting a longer telephoto lens was to put on a extender. Mm-hmm. So I had a 50 millimeter lens. If I want a 100 millimeter lens, I put on a 2X extender.
Yep.
If I wanted 200 millimeters, I'd put on another one.
Yes.
And of course, you know, your quality degraded horribly, but I was a high school kid and that was all I could afford. It didn't really matter. I was like, how can I get that reach? That was how I was solving a problem.
Yeah.
It was a horrible way to do it, but it was all I could do.
But also I think you learn through going through those experiences yourself rather than just being told. There is something that you learn when you really understand it. And even if it's just something you figured out for yourself and then you look back and say, you know what, there's a better way to do this. Or
there was no one to tell me anything. Nobody I knew was into photography. There was no internet. I mean, I graduated from high school in 1981. There was no internet. There were no peers. There was nobody in the world that would tell me anything about photography, because nobody that I knew was aware of, you know, photography other than a Kodak Instamatic with those little revolving flash cubes.
Yes.
I was determined to go to a photography school, and it was either going to be Brooks in California or what used to be Daytona Beach Community College, which is now a state college, which has an outstanding school for photography. And those were like, you know, the two leading contenders at the time I was looking at it. Turns out I didn't go. I got into computers instead. I put photography down. And then years later, and digital came up. It was just before that I was actually trying to get my film cameras going again. And I really screwed something up and I said, I want to go digital. And then I kind of had to relearn things. And the gear was different because instead of working with my old Olympus cameras, I was working with Nikon. And I had to kind of come up to speed all over again. And it really was about the gear then, because I thought that's how you solve problems. You buy something.
Yeah. And there are certain situations where that is true, but I think it's oversold as a solution.
But these days, I don't look to gear to fix my problems. One, because I've bought enough gear. I have the gear that I need to resolve almost anything. I think the only thing in gear that I'm looking at buying these days might be a couple of different monolights, studio strobes. And that's really based upon how many I have right now and what power level they're at. Other than that, I've got flashes. I can light something up. I can just simply light it differently with some other gear.
Yeah.
That's a nice to have. It's not a need to have. And I say that knowingly because we've got other household projects that we want to do, and we put our money for that rather than me going off and getting more lights.
That's true. Yeah.
So it's not that I've got to have it. I can solve my problems with the gear that I have. But I don't know if I looked at when I first started off, I don't really know that I knew what I was taking photos of. I wasn't thinking creatively. I was thinking I would almost stumble upon a nice photo.
That's interesting because my initial draw to photography was to find an outlet for my creative side. I wanted a place to share my stories, my memories, and I wanted my own unique take on it. I wanted to do it through my eyes and with my personal touches. So I guess that really is the creative side that was there and drawing me in.
So you had a creative side before that, though.
I did
with your art,
and but I didn't know how to translate it into my photography and creativity. I think I just generally like to feel my way in it. There are times when I need some technical advice and education and help. Even if it's just speaking to somebody who's got a bit more experience or overcome a problem before. But I also fell into the same trap as you, as I had this new camera and realized that what I had, I was going to need more to do what I wanted to do, and I've kind of gone through, I don't want to say a full circle, but at least 3/4 of one, maybe a 270 degrees, because I'm on my way back again to basics, where I got into the whole thing with the gear. And I will tell you quite openly, I got really excited about my new gear. I'd get a new lens, and if I could have tucked that thing into bed with me, I would have done it. Would have had coffee in the morning before me. I was really excited about my new gear. But then what I learned when I got something new, I was walking around with my camera. It's like when you get a new power tool. If those of you who love power tools, because I do, you get a new drill and you start walking around the house, kind of like, where can I use this?
So it's kind of like when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of what I was doing. So I was taking photos of absolute nonsense just so that I could practice and use it. Now, there's merit in that as well. Practicing, I think, is a good thing. So these weren't photos to share. But I think I got my enjoyment out of it. I sort of almost justified the expense by that. And ultimately, most of those lenses I ended up selling. So I didn't keep a lot of that stuff. It wasn't just lenses. I mean, there was other gear that I just never brought with me when we got married and I moved, because I realized that they weren't the most important thing. Now, I do enjoy my DSLR. I do prefer using that to my iPhone. But with my lifestyle and the way that I'm using photos, there are a lot of times, like today's a recent example, where I needed to get in there, get a photo, and I just wanted to get it done. I didn't want to mess around with a memory card. I didn't want to mess around with a tripod or fixing the lights or anything. And I just wanted to spend 5 minutes on it and have it ready to add some graphics, and it's good to go. So the iPhone worked. And that really just came down to taking the little iPhone, getting in at an angle that I would never have got to with my DSLR for the shot that I wanted. It was very simple. And I think that I'm relying more on creativity than I am on gear now.
You know what? You brought something up that was almost leading me towards wanting a new camera. And I found another solution to handle the problem. And my camera right now is a Nikon D800. It's a few years old. I mean, it's been replaced by the D810 and then by the D850. And by all respects, the D810 really wasn't that big of a jump, I don't think. It wasn't worth me upgrading. The D850, for quite a while, I wanted that. And it was hard to get. Plus, it was expensive, and my memory cards wouldn't work with it. So there were trade-offs with getting that, and I never did. And, of course, now the new mirrorless ones come out. But what I wanted was that little LCD on the back that could flip up. Because there are times where you really want to get a low angle, but you can't really get your eye down there to align your composition. And that little flip up panel, it just means all the world. It's very nice. I kind of wish it were more like some of the Canon ones, that would flip out. And maybe if you're on the other side and you were doing video, you could see yourself. Or even if you were just doing, self-portraits, you could see it that way. I found another way of doing this, and it's a product called Arsenal. And I'm not an affiliate, but if you want to check it out, the website is called witharsenal.com. And it's a little computer that goes on top of your camera and plugs in, so basically it fits in the hot shoe. And then it plugs in on one of the ports on the side. The nice thing about this is it hooks up to your iPhone. And this is something else that I think you can do with some of the newer Nikons, like the D850. You know, it'll set up a little Wi-Fi connection so you can see your shots on your iPhone, or you can have your photos come over. So this little with Arsenal thing was just a little under $200. Much, much better than spending, you know, close to $4,000 for getting a new camera just to have those two features.
So wait, what does it do? So you take the picture with your DSLR and you've got this thing all set up and active. And then what, it sends the photo that you took to your iPhone?
It does much more than that. I mean, for one thing, let's say that you set your camera down at a low angle. You can't see through the viewfinder, but you plug this thing in and you can see on your iPhone or an Android. It works with that as well, I believe.
Oh, it becomes like a tilt LCD, I guess.
You could be standing off to the side. You could be, you know, several feet away. I don't know what the distance is, but you don't have to be there right by the camera in order to see it.
That's pretty cool if your own shadow is going to be a pain.
But that's not the only thing that it does. I mean, like I said, it'll let you take the photo and it'll transfer the photo over to your iPhone. So then if you just want to send something out immediately, you don't have to go back and put a card in. You don't have to do all the things that you were just talking about why you use your iPhone. It'll wirelessly transfer it to your phone. But it also has other features for doing time lapse and, you know, different types of little things. And it's like $200. It's basically a little computer that enhances your camera.
Have you ordered it yet?
It's sitting in the drawer behind us.
Huh.
I've got it.
Since when?
I've had it a few weeks now.
Have you tried it?
Yes.
Oh, you didn't tell me about it.
I'm sorry. I didn't realize I was obligated. Yes. Anyways, all right. I will show it to you because sometimes if you want to use your camera, but you don't want to use, you know, the card reader and all that other stuff, this would probably work just fine for you. You just simply plug it in, use your phone. So in other words, you could be up against your backdrop or whatever it's going to be and have the camera pointing at you. And then you can adjust yourself because you can see the viewfinder before you take the shot. And then you can set up with a timer, or you could just click the shutter right then and there. Depends on whether you want to see the iPhone in the shot.
William buys cool stuff and he doesn't always tell me.
This was a Kickstarter thing. I actually ordered this at the beginning of the year, I think.
Huh.
And I got a feeling I'm in trouble now.
No, he's not in trouble. I like to try these things. It sounds really cool. And here I'm going, oh, that sounds wonderful. Why didn't we get one? And he's like, oh, I've had one for a few weeks now.
Yeah.
That's important.
All I'm saying is there are ways around buying new gear.
Yes.
You never know what they're going to be. This little computer that plugs into it and lets you do remote control off your smartphone, to me, just saved me thousands of dollars of upgrading my camera for the features that I wanted. But now I don't need to spend that money on that piece of gear because I've got it with, you know, a little, basically a plug-in for my camera.
Yeah, you're definitely not in trouble, honey, because he's using the money he's saved to build me a patio.
Yes, I am. So that's one of the things, like, was I driven to that because of gear or creativity? Or really what draws you, I think, is budget. Before we were married, I had the money to go off and spend, not only the money, but the time to go off and spend on various pieces of gear. So I wanted 6 lenses, and I've got them. And the first 3 were what's called the Nikon Zoom trilogy, the 14 to 24, the 24 to 70, and the 70 to 200. All wonderful lenses. I've used all of them, and I'm really happy to have them. And on the prime side, I wanted what they have is a Nikon Prime trilogy, which is the 85 millimeter f1.4, the 35 millimeter 1.4, and the 24 millimeter 1.4. We really love our 35. I know you've used that one several times, and I like that one too. And I've used the 24, but honestly, not enough to warrant what it cost. And I think my 24 millimeter zoom 2.8 probably satisfies me for that. I can't think of times when I really want to pull out a 24 millimeter prime. But the 35 and the 85 I've definitely used. But even with the 85, I can get the same kind of bokeh at 200 millimeters f2.8 on the zoom lens. But I got those because of what we were talking about with the forums, and the people said, oh, these are the great glass items that you need. You can take wonderful photos if you have these lenses.
Yeah, no, but have you noticed you get told if you get these 3, you won't need anything else. And then once you've got that, you start reading, and if you get those next 3, you won't need anything else. But it's never the end, is it?
Well, on Nikon, there are a couple of other lenses that come up, but I didn't buy. If you're a landscape photographer in Nikon and you want to go wide angle and use filters, that 14 to 24 doesn't really work. It's got a very round kind of bulb front end. It doesn't work with filters. But a 16 to 35 millimeter is much less expensive, and it'll work with filters. And the difference between 14 millimeter and 16 millimeter is not all that great. You've got a bit more range with a 16 to 35. That does great for a lot of landscape and travel photographers. The other one is a 105 millimeter prime. There's a couple of them up there. One of them is a macro lens. Another one of them is an f1.4. Mostly it's for a portrait lens. And then there's the big kahuna, the 200 millimeter f2, which costs a little over $6,000.
It's insane.
It makes glorious portraits. I mean, the bokeh and the presence on your subject on that is much better than you're going to find with any of the other lenses that I discussed. But $6,000, man, I don't need it that bad.
I think if you're doing a lot of portraits and this is how you're earning your money, or you're trying to, you're moving in that direction, then I can see that as an investment. But yeah, that is a lot of money just for a hobby. If you don't have it, if you've got it and you want to play with it,
look, I can rent that lens a number of times before I come up to $6,000.
Yeah, that's true.
And I really believe in the idea of renting something before you buy it. Yeah, maybe add on something to what the total cost is going to be. On the other hand, it could save you a lot of money if you rent it and say, this doesn't really do what everybody was telling me it was going to do, or it doesn't work for my photography. Or maybe it's nice, but it's not worth the money.
Yeah, or you're just not going to use it enough to justify the outlay.
And I can guarantee you, I'm not going to use a 200 millimeter f2 enough to justify over $6,000 to spend on that lens.
Yeah.
We can do a lot of things around the house for $6,000. And that's not a matter of budget. That's just, well, to me, that's common sense. There are people who buy it because they've got the budget, they want it, and they got it. And I don't have a single problem in the world with that. There are some people who really enjoy the gear, I think, more than the results of their photography.
I think if you can afford it and it makes you happy, I don't see any reason why you should not do it.
No, neither do I.
I really don't. For me, budget actually forced me to rely more heavily on my creativity because I just couldn't afford it. There were certain things. I mean, I went without stuff. I had to always choose, like, am I going to get a new lens, or am I going to get this, that, and the other thing for myself in the next 6 to 8 months? And a lot of the time, the photography gear would win. But I kind of moved around in that little circle, and that's what I said at the beginning. I'm kind of coming back to where I was, where I'm realizing I like this stuff. I have a lot of fun with it. I mean, if somebody offered me to go and play around with some new gear, I'd be jumping at it without any hesitation. It is fun. So I don't dismiss that or pretend that I don't care. But I have limitations on what I can buy, and I always have done. So I rely a lot more heavily on the challenge of what can I do with what I have, and what you have is really what you have access to right now in your hand when you want to take that photo.
Well, just to give you an idea how snobbish I was about gear, we were talking about this recently, and this is before we were married and we were living, an ocean apart from each other. And you asked me about a tripod. Mm-hmm. And do you remember what I told you?
Yes, he gave me a suggestion for the tripod that I used and a link, and I looked at the link and I thought, man, that costs almost the same as my camera body. So I said to him, that's way above my budget. I said, but I can afford like maybe $350. And for me, that was a stretch. That was like, okay, I will make some cuts elsewhere. But that's the maximum I can push to, because I didn't want to buy something on credit. And William said, you're going to get what you pay for. If you're going to buy on the low end, that's the quality you're going to get. And then he disappeared. I didn't hear from him for a few days. So I kind of thought, okay.
So yeah, and I don't get to be blamed as a horrible husband because we weren't married then.
No, we weren't married.
But at the time, that was, well, first off, I gave you the advice that I really believed in at the time.
Yes. And your tripod is a much better quality than, actually, I ended up paying $60 for a tripod that's been mauled by the dogs and everything. So I'm kind of glad that it wasn't the $1,000, $2,000, whatever you paid for yours.
The dogs would have never mauled the $2,000 tripod. Well, actually, it was $1,000 tripod, not $2,000.
Our golden retriever eats through concrete. She would have mauled that thing.
You wouldn't have left it for her to maul. Anyways, there's an idea with the most expensive thing you buy is the thing you have to buy twice, yes, or in some cases more than twice. That's why I was giving you the advice, like, get the good one. Get the one that's you can drag through the mud and whatever else, and you can still clean it out and wash it, and it will last you a lifetime. And that's true. I have never needed to replace that tripod because of damage or wear or anything else, and I don't expect that I will.
No, that's true. I think the other thing that I took into account in that moment, though, was that my camera body, I've got a crop sensor camera. I've got the old D7000, and the heaviest lens that I ever put on there was the 24-70. So the weight of my camera and lens at its heaviest was nowhere near what yours is. So obviously you do need, I mean, there is a maximum load, and your stability isn't that great when you start pushing the upper ends of that load on any tripod. So I understood that my needs were less than what yours were, just on that basic point.
But my advice was, your cameras, you're going to change bodies from time to time.
Yeah.
You don't need to change tripods. Get a tripod that will work with everything. And that's what I was advising her at the time. These days, you can get carbon fiber tripods for much less than I spent on this one, and probably be very well off with it. So, but at the time, I don't think we had anything like that available. And the one you got was within your budget. It worked.
Yeah.
It didn't last. And that's kind of where I come back to, is like, does your budget affect whether you want to be more creative or if you want to play with your gear? And I think it does, because I've seen that when I, had excess money and no family obligations, I spent it on buying a lot of gear. When that changed, for a combination of being laid off from my job, getting married and having a family and other obligations.
I'm expensive.
Actually, she's a cheap date, but her daughter's expensive. Our daughter's expensive.
Yes.
We look at it very differently now. And now we're looking at it as, how can we be creative with what we've got? The good news is I got a lot of good stuff.
Yes, you do.
I don't really need to go buy something else. And for those few features that I wanted, I found a $200 solution instead of a $4,000 solution. Mm-hmm. That's much, much more better for everyone concerned.
Much more better for me too. Can I borrow it?
Yes.
Thank you.
But I think that some of the people who really enjoy playing with the capabilities of a camera, and that could be anything from the bokeh to, one example that comes to mind is stroboscopic flash. And if you're not familiar with what that means, stroboscopic means when you're doing kind of a long exposure and your flash keeps going off like every fraction of a second, so you can see the progression of your subject. So if you've probably seen a shot like this before, like maybe a snow skier where the skier is going over a jump and you see them replicated kind of, a different
frames,
spot.
like in frames.
Almost like in frames. It's one frame, but you see the person, going from this spot to this spot until they land.
Yeah.
And that's because the flash is hitting the person. And I've seen the same thing on a pool table where you see someone do a shot and then you see the pool cue go, there's a ball here and here and here, and it keeps on going until it bounces off and hits another one, goes in. Those are very technical shots. Are they creative shots? Well, to some extent they are, but do they mean anything? And that's where I came across, a photographer in the past who did something like that. And the review that he got is, this is a technically perfect example of a boring photo.
Yeah. Well, it's documentary style, really. That's all it is. And I'm sure there are some instances where you can be extremely creative with that progression, but depending what it is, I think on the basic level, that is, it's really a documentary style shot, which is not.
I've seen it used in dance as well. Like, somebody starting a dance on one side of the stage and the flash is above, and they're capturing the movements of dance across from one side of the stage to the other. And it shows the creativity of the dancer. I got to admit that these are not my favorite photographs to look at, but I appreciate both the talent of the people who are doing the action and the technical ability of those who are creating the shot. It tells a story. I mean, you see progression in one photograph. It does tell a story. It's not my thing. That's all.
Yeah, same here. Although I have to say, I think the person who came up with that concept and realized there was this way to do it, that in itself was creativity.
Oh, absolutely. And this is kind of really like, who are you as a photographer? What really drives your satisfaction? And that's kind of what we wanted to ask is, how can you determine what drives your satisfaction? Is it really the result is because it's a compelling story, or because it's a technical achievement?
Yeah, that's true. Do you like playing with your newest toys, which is lots of fun?
And it may not be at the point of capture. It may be what you do in post-processing, whether a Lightroom or Photoshop or some of the other tools, or maybe even printing.
That's true, yeah.
And we were just talking the other night when we haven't really been printing that much lately. And I've brought it up that I kind of wanted to start working with a lab to do some more prints. And you were looking at creating some photo books.
I want to do some more photo books. Yeah. The service that I used to use gave me a lot of flexibility, and they don't exist anymore. They merged with another company, and you know what happens when that happens.
The things that you love about it go away. The
things that you love get taken away, which I did write to them at the time. It was about 4 or 5 years ago, but I haven't really found anything that does the same thing. So I'm looking for alternative ways to get the same result that I got through different companies right now. So that's kind of what I'm working on.
One of the things I've always kind of given as advice is start with the end in mind. And that's not always possible. For example, the photo book that you're talking about, you didn't start taking your photos thinking, I know these are going into a photo book, because that would help you choose which photos you take. Sometimes you can do that, but I think in this particular case, you took the photos and now you're thinking we want to do a photo book.
No, I'm thinking, yeah. Although, in the past, I think, but when I got my first DSLR, I was already doing photo books and thinking in lines of, this will make a good background. I want this for part of my story. I want this for the page with the small things. So, yep, I was definitely thinking about it going into a book when I was taking photos for the most part. Not all of them, but most of the photos I took had that in mind. But also, I think it's kind of easier now because for my photo books, if I made one now, I have a much clearer direction when I'm taking my photos. I have a purpose for everything when I'm taking them. So they belong somewhere and I've got them sorted. So making a photo book, I don't think I need to plan as carefully when I'm taking the photo for the most part as what I did in the past, because it's almost become a habit. There's always a reason why I'm taking a picture.
I've done this kind of like planning with the end in mind in sections, because there are times where I will take photographs of something that I want to use as a texture or a background on a future photograph. I may not even know what the portrait is or the photo I'm going to use the texture for, but I know that this is going to be good and I want to add it to my collection. There are other times I'll take a photograph of some subject because I thought I want to composite that into another photo some other time. And I'm collecting elements and I'm beginning that thought process knowing that there's an end in mind, even if I don't know exactly what the end is. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, but I kind of go around and I collect things that I will use later.
Yeah.
And it's like the old MacGyver, films. I remember the very first TV show he had, he said, I need a bag or something like that. And he says, well, what are you taking with you? He said, it's not for what I'm taking with me. It's what I find along the way. And that's kind of that's why I take some of my photos that way. It's like, these are things I found along the way. And I thought, that's interesting. I know that will be a good background someday.
Yes, I do that all the time.
So when it comes to what drives your satisfaction of photography, for you, is it capturing things, post-processing, or creating your book, or printing them? I mean, what do you love the most?
That's a hard one because I really enjoy every step. I think I enjoy the experience of the start to finish of creating a story. I have to say planning a photo is maybe my least favorite when I have to plan something because I'm very much in the moment. I would say finishing the photo is my favorite because that's the point where I know for sure that I'm happy with what I got.
And I think if you start with the end in mind, that really kind of helps you understand, like which part of your photography experience gives you the most satisfaction. I think you'll start to make decisions, even if you're capturing in the moment, like you said. Maybe you're not thinking of your final frame or your final book that you're going to do. But if you think about which part of photography you enjoy the most, that drives your decisions as to, am I going to do this creatively or do I need gear to help me get this? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what I'm thinking of when I'm looking at the lights that I was talking about, the Godox 8400. I'll get the flashpoint version, but I'm looking at some of the creative capabilities that they provide and the power that it provides and think, okay, this will do better than what I have now. It's not an urgent need, but at some point that will set me up to do some things that I can't do today that I can envision. So that was our show today. We want to let you kind of decide, what do you like about photography? Is it the creativity or is it the gear? And there is no wrong answer. We don't really have any judgment on that because I've certainly been on both sides of it.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed both of them without any doubt. And let's face it, if I had a lot more money, I would probably still have a lot more gear.
I'd have more props. So yeah, that kind of falls into the gear. It's the stuff category. So absolutely, for sure.
If I had just, the money to throw whatever I want, I would have a studio and I would build little sets on there.
We have less of a problem with the money than we do with the space to keep it.
No, the space would not be here at the house. We're talking separate building.
Yeah.
We'd have to go someplace, but set up the sets for what I want to do. And that's kind of like an ultimate dream. Maybe one day it'll happen, but it's not going to happen this year.
You should leave us a comment about your favorite stuff and tell us what you like the most and why. Like if you've got little pieces to add. I like reading things like that.
Yeah, we would love that. Leave your comments at williambeem.com/episode 145. Tell us what it is that you love about your photography, what you really want to find. Is it go to a certain place to photograph a person, get more gear, or do a better job of post-processing or printing? Whatever part of your photographic journey, we'd love to know more about it. So please let us know. Thank you so much for joining us on the Photo Flunky Show, episode 145. And of course, as I just mentioned, go to williambeem.com/episode 145 for the show notes on this episode. And while you're at it, we would love it if you would subscribe to us on iTunes. You can go to williambeem.com/iTunes. You can subscribe right now if you're listening on your device, or you can go to our website at photoflunky.com. And not only can you subscribe on iTunes, but you can also subscribe on Google Play, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Thank you so much. We'll see you again next week.